centuries, the elephant treaded the endless shifting seas of the Rub al-Khali. He was a leviathan of bone, hide, and ancient power, a colossal, unnatural elephant wandering the scorched expanse of Arabia. From the shadows of sandstorms and the silence of moonlit dunes, he had watched the world change. He watched the rise and fall of pagan kingdoms, the trade caravans dragging spice and silk, and eventually the fiery rise of Islam, sweeping across the desert like a divine wind. Yet he remained an outsider to it all. His purpose was absolute, carved into his soul by divine mandate. He was a collector, a shepherd of the damned. He had been sent to offer humans a terrible, tempting bargain, their immortal souls in exchange for unnatural longevity, immense power, and an unshakable place in a grand design. But humans were fragile, fearful creatures. To the Bedouin tribes, the beast was not a god or a savior. He was merely a horror of the deep desert. They spoke of him in hushed, terrified whispers around campfires, lumping him in with the malicious jinn and dark spirits that haunted the desolate wastes. Avoid the iron tusk, they warned their children. Because of their fear, the elephant failed. For hundreds of years, the only souls desperate enough to seal his contract were the lowest of the low, thieves, murderers, exiles, and starving cowards who had nothing left to lose. For all his terrifying size and cosmic burden, the beast was intensely, agonizingly lonely. He was failing his mission, and far above the clouds, past the stars, Yahweh was watching. After a heavy meal of dark dates and dirty roots, the elephant lumbered into a barren salt flat to relieve himself. The heavy waste hit the sun-baked earth with a dull thud. Instantly, the dry ground cracked open. The pile ignited, bursting into a blinding, white-hot inferno that roared higher than the palm trees. The heat burned away the desert wind, leaving a suffocating, sacred silence. From the heart of the roaring flame, a voice echoed, not as a sound, but as a tectonic force vibrating through the earth itself. "Why have you not fulfilled your part of the bargain, beast?" The elephant let out a low, mournful, trumpeting roar, trying to defend his centuries of effort. He swung his massive head, arguing before he could finish. A blinding flash of divine judgment struck him. The colossal elephantine frame withered, collapsing inward with sickening snaps of bone and tearing muscle. The beast vanished. In his place, a lone man fell onto the hot sand, gasping for air. But he was not free. The dark, crushing weight of the elephant still rested invisibly upon his shoulders, pinning his human chest to the earth, making every breath feel like inhaling molten lead. The burning pillar raged higher, Yahweh's anger searing the man's skin. "You continuously bring me garbage souls and expect to keep the power I granted you. You were meant to walk among them as a king. You should be worshipped by these people. The most righteous, the most powerful among them should willingly surrender their souls to you." The broken man pressed his face into the burning sand, coughing through the suffocating weight. I cannot force them, Lord," the man wheezed, his voice raw and pathetic compared to his usual roar. "They hide in their cities. They hide behind their prayers. I cannot see into their hearts. I cannot know who holds true power or whose soul you deem worthy." The holy fire blazed with a terrifying, white, blinding light, expanding until it consumed the horizon. "Then I shall give you eyes to see." The burning mountain of waste exploded in a concussive shockwave, knocking the sky itself silent. The divine presence vanished as quickly as it had arrived, leaving behind only the scent of ozone and scorched earth. The invisible weight lifted. The man gasped, his body violently warping back into his true, massive, elephantine form. Muscles expanded, thick gray hide hardened like iron plate, and massive, curved tusks burst from his jaw once more. But he was different now. When the beast opened his eyes, the world had changed. He no longer saw just sand and stone, he saw currents. He saw the radiant, pulsing threads of spiritual power, fate, and righteous bloodlines weaving through the air, stretching across the desert toward distant cities and forgotten oases. He could feel every highborn soul, every powerful warrior, and every divine bloodline for 1,000 miles. The elephant rose from the crater, throwing his massive head back. A deafening roar shook the dunes, reverberating across Arabia. He no longer had doubt. He no longer had hesitation. He had only a burning, obsessive desire to hunt down the grandest souls in the realm and present his wicked god with the ultimate feast. Not far from where the burning desert sands swallowed the divine flames lay the city of peace, a radiant jewel rising out of the dunes, bathed in eternal splendor. Deep within the towering alabaster arcades of the royal palace lived Ambrain, the daughter of Sultan Ophir. To the people, she was not merely royalty, she was the heart of the city itself. loved by every servant, merchant, and guard who crossed her path. Her grace was so absolute that even the jinn, watching silently from the unseen spaces between the shadows, admired her from afar. Yet Ambrain lived in blissful ignorance of the dark, ancient foundation upon which her paradise was built. She did not know that her father's empire was a phantom city. The human metropolis existed in direct overlap with a hidden, ethereal city of jinn. Every archway, every flowing fountain, and every grand marketplace was mirrored in the spirit world, and the only reason the two realms did not tear each other apart was a sacred peace treaty forged decades ago. Long before he wore a crown, Sultan Ophir was nothing more than a fearless, noble beggar wandering the empty quarter. It was in the deep desert that he had encountered Deltarij, an ancient and terrifying jinni of immense power. Where other men would have begged for mercy, Ophir had shown only unwavering kindness and absolute courage. Respecting the mortal's spirit, Deltarij granted Ophir riches no human had ever seen, but the price was permanent and absolute. Ophir himself became part of the treasure. His flesh was transformed into solid, heavy, radiant gold. To conceal his true, metallic nature from his subjects and his daughter, the Sultan spent hours every morning applying thick, flesh-toned makeup to hide the blinding luster of his skin. The jinn raised his walls, diverted a roaring river straight through the heart of the desert to nourish his gardens, and built a sanctuary. Mortals flocked to the magical haven by the thousands, crowning Ophir as their sultan. The treaty was simple. Ophir could never leave the city limits. In return, his people were strictly forbidden from hunting, capturing, or attempting to control the jinn, ensuring both species lived in prosperous harmony. One of Ophir's wives bore him Ambrain, and for many years, the City of Peace lived up to its name. Yet, even in a paradise built by magic, the shadows still gathered in the corners. Down in the narrow, winding alleyways far below the palace balconies lived Haron. Abandoned as an infant on the steps of a local house of worship, Haron had grown up on the cold charity of monks and street vendors until he was a teenager, when he was finally cast out to fend for himself. Haron was wrong, he was different. Where normal men saw only stone and air, Haron saw the veil pulled back. He could see the unseen world clearly. Priests and guards would often catch the boy standing in empty alleyways, whispering to unseen figures, ghosts, and hovering jinn. But he didn't just see them, he could touch them. Whispers rippled through the bazaars that the boy was a half-breed, born of a human mother and a wandering spirit. Worse still, Haron would occasionally vanish into thin air without warning, slipping through the thin spots in reality and tumbling into the terrifying, shifting landscapes of the spirit realm. He would return hours later, shivering, terrified, and clutching his head, unable to control the violent shifting of his blood. Because of this, the city treated him like a curse. Most people avoided him, crossing the street when his strange, distant eyes turned their way. Sultan Ophir watched him from high towers with a heavy heart, sensing that Haron carried a lingering darkness that could threaten the city's fragile peace. The jinn themselves found the boy fascinating, a curious anomaly in the veil, but they were fickle creatures and never stayed long enough to offer him comfort. Haron had no family, he had no friends, he had nothing. On cold nights, the boy would sit atop the crumbling flat roofs of the outer slums, wrapping his thin cloak around himself as he gazed at the glittering spires of the Sultan's palace. It looked so warm, so welcoming, a place where everyone seemed to belong to something greater. Desperate for human warmth, Haron often sought out abandoned ruins and dark, subterranean caverns, actively hunting down wandering jinn just to hear a voice speak back to him. But the spirits always drifted away into the ether, leaving the lonely boy sitting in the dark, staring at a city of millions, entirely alone. Night fell over the City of Peace, painting the sky in deep shades of indigo and violet. As the people retreated to their homes and the palace lanterns flickered alive, no one noticed the shadows twisting at the edge of the dunes. An invading army moved through the dark, silent and unseen. At the head of this silent legion marched Paganite, a ruthless, legendary assassin whose name was spoken only in nervous whispers across the trade routes. He was a dark warrior of forgotten, blood-soaked pantheons, a man consumed by a cold, burning vengeance against the rise of Allah and the one-God faiths that had pushed his people's ancient gods into the dust of history. Paganite paused at the crest of a massive dune, staring down at the glowing alabaster metropolis. His eyes burned with absolute fanatical hatred. This radiant city of peace stood upon the exact same sands where his ancestors had once offered sacrifices to the primordial gods of the sun, storm, and iron. To him, the Sultan's paradise was a mockery, an insult to the old ways. Why should these worshippers of the one God hoard all the riches of Arabia? Paganite thought, his fingers tightening around the hilt of his poisoned blade. Why should their streets run with clear water while the old temples rot in the desert? He didn't just come to plunder. Paganite was here on a sacred warpath to avenge his gods. His orders were absolute: infiltrate the city under the cover of darkness, slaughter the golden Sultan Ophir in his throne room, and claim the city of peace for the ancient pantheons. As his silent army began to spill over the walls like a dark wave, the fate of the city swung in the balance. Paganite was coming for Ophir, the elephant was drawing near, tracking the city's purest light, and young Haron was sitting in the shadows, the only one who might see the nightmare before it strikes. High above the sleeping city, perched on the cold lip of a sandstone rooftop, Haron's strange eyes caught the first ripple in the darkness. Figures decked in silent, pitch-black armor and bearing curved, poisoned steel were slithering through the alleyways like oil on water. They moved in perfect, deadly formation, sweeping toward the royal palace. The shadows had come to life. Paganite's vanguard. No, Haron gasped, his heart pounding against his ribs. Panic surged through him. Forget his fear of the guards, forget the way the townspeople threw stones at him, he had to warn them. The Golden Sultan, the princess in her high tower, they had no idea death was at their doorstep. Haron scrambled off the roof, vaulting over low walls and dropping into the alley below with a muted thud. He sprinted full speed through the narrow streets, his lungs burning, heading straight for the palace gates. But his fear was too violent, his pulse racing too fast. His chaotic blood betrayed him. The air around him suddenly turned cold as ice. The world lost its color, bleaching into shades of ash, smoke, and shifting silver light. Haron hit the ground hard as he unwillingly slipped through the veil, tumbling headfirst into the spirit realm. When he scrambled to his feet, the physical city was still there, but blurred and ghostly. The invading assassins moved through the streets below like phantom shapes, completely unaware of his presence. But standing on the roofs, leaning against the walls, and hovering in the moonlit air were them, the jinn. Dozens of ancient spirits were gathered, their dark, ethereal forms watching the assassination force with cold, detached curiosity. "What are you doing?" Haron screamed, his voice echoing violently through the unseen world. He lunged toward a towering, shadow-wrapped jinni standing near an archway. "They're going to kill the Sultan. They're going to destroy the city. Help them. Why aren't you doing anything?" Not a single spirit moved. Not a single eye flashed with pity. To the jinn, human empires rose and fell like dust in the wind, and the treaty was only meant to protect their kind, not save mortal men from their own wars. They simply stared through Haron, indifferent to the nightmare unfolding in the waking world. Tears of rage and helplessness stinging his eyes, Haron bared his teeth. "Fine," he spat. Unable to pull himself back into the physical world, the boy did the only thing he could. He threw himself forward, sprinting through the ethereal crowds, driving his phantom body through the spirit realm toward the palace, desperately seeking a way to break back into reality before the blood began to spill. Sliding past the perimeter with ghost-like precision, Paganite's strike team breached the outer gates, leaving a trail of silent, slurred corpses behind them. Deep inside the quiet halls of the palace, Princess Ambrain descended the grand marble staircase. Unable to sleep, she was heading to the kitchens for her usual night ritual, a quiet cup of warm milk and honey. She turned the corner right as a shadow detached itself from the pillar. Her eyes widened, catching the glint of blood-stained steel. Ambrain opened her mouth and let out a piercing scream. Thoop! A small, feathered dart struck her shoulder. The venom acted instantly. Her vision blurred, her knees buckled, and she collapsed to the cool stone floor, unconscious before her body even hit the ground. Her scream, however, had done its work. Drums thundered through the palace as guards poured into the grand hall from every wing. Swords clattered, torches flared, and panic erupted. But Paganite's men were elite killers. They formed a lethal wall of iron, effortlessly cutting down the palace guards and holding the line. At the top of the grand staircase, doors burst open. Sultan Ophir stepped into the light, his eyes locking directly with Paganite's. Blasphemer. Paganite hissed, leaping up the marble steps, his dual blades flashing. They collided with brutal force. Ophir fought with the desperate strength of a ruler protecting his home, but Paganite was a demon on the battlefield. Every strike from the assassin's curved blades carved deep through Ophir's robes, slicing his skin. But instead of red blood, the cuts glinted with blinding, polished yellow, exposing the heavy, solid gold frame hiding beneath his makeup. In the spirit realm, Haron screamed, throwing his hands out and trying frantically to shove Paganite, to grab his blades, to trip him, anything. But he was a ghost. His phantom hands passed uselessly through the assassin like cold wind. He was entirely helpless. With a powerful kick to the chest, Paganite sent the heavy golden sultan crashing down the stairs. Ophir hit the landing hard, his body ringing with a metallic thud, unable to rise. Paganite stepped down the stairs, towering over the fallen king, a gloating grin spreading across his face. Your one god cannot save you, gilded beggar. This city returns to. Crash, the palace outer wall exploded inward in a shower of flying stone, dust, and blinding dust. Out of the darkness raged a nightmare, a colossal, ancient elephantine monster, eyes burning with pale divine light. The beast let out a deafening roar that shattered the stained glass windows, lunging into the grand hall with terrifying speed. It was a total slaughter. The elephant slammed through Paganite's lines, crushing assassins under massive iron-like feet, swinging its giant tusks to hurl armed men through stone pillars like ragdolls. Paganite lunged at the beast, striking with all his lethality, but his blades merely sparked uselessly against the beast's impenetrable ancient hide. With a single, brutal blow from its trunk, the elephant smashed Paganite into the marble floor, breaking his ribs and pinning him to the ground. The beast reared back, its massive, crushing foot raised over Paganite's head to deliver a lethal blow. No, Sultan Ophir wheezed, pushing himself up, his golden skin gleaming under his torn, bloody garments. Don't kill him. He will stand judgment before the city for what he has done today. The elephant paused, its massive, glowing eye turning toward the Sultan. The beast slowly lowered its foot, bowing its giant head. As you wish, Sultan, a deep, rumblesome voice echoed from the monster's chest. At that exact second, the air violently shivered. A rift in reality snapped shut, and Haron suddenly burst out of the spirit realm, tumbling hard onto the blood-soaked marble in the very center of the carnage. He gasped for air, scrambling up. Sultan, the assassins, I tried to. Guards, Ophir barked, gesturing weakly from the stairs. Pointing at both the bleeding Paganite and the terrified, outcast boy, take the assassin and take him to the dungeons. Before Haron could even explain, heavy hands grabbed his arms, dragging him down into the dark cells below, leaving the true predator standing victoriously in the royal hall, welcomed by the king. Ophir looked to Ambrain, my daughter. The spell of silence in the ruined hall snapped. Disregarding his own fractured golden frame and the blood seeping through his silk robes, Sultan Ophir threw himself down the stairs toward the motionless body of Ambrain. He dropped to his knees, gently cradling her head. Her skin was turning an icy, bruised blue, a blackish fluid weeping from the tiny dart wound on her neck. The Paganite venom was quick, creeping toward her heart with every passing second. Get her to the royal chambers, now! Ophir roared at the surviving guards, who scrambled forward, lifting the unconscious princess onto a litter. As the guards rushed her away, Ophir stood up, turning to face the titanic, shadow-draped beast towering amidst the rubble of his home. The elephant bowed its massive head, its glowing eyes projecting a deceptive, gentle reverence. You saved my life, and saved this kingdom from total ruin, Ophir said, his voice trembling with a mix of awe and heavy exhaustion. A creature of your ancient power, stepping forth to defend the innocent. It is nothing short of a miracle. I cannot repay this debt, but I offer you a home within these walls. Stay, noble beast, be the guardian of Ophir." The elephant let out a low, resonant rumble that shook the floorboards, a sound that carried the dark, hidden satisfaction of a predator taking its place at the head of the table. "Your grace honors me, Sultan," the beast's voice echoed in the air. "I shall stay, I shall watch over your house, and all the souls within it." Minutes later, the high royal chambers were bathed in the frantic, golden glow of dozens of torches. Royal apothecaries scrambled, hurling useless herbs and ointments into bowls, whispering in terror, mortal medicine was useless against paganite alchemy. Ambrain's breathing was growing dangerously shallow. Driven to desperate measures, Sultan Ophir turned away from his human court and stepped toward the shadowy alcove of the chamber. He raised his ringed hand, speaking an ancient, binding word that hummed in the air. The shadows behind the tapestries peeled back, coiling together to form the ethereal, sharp-featured visage of Deltarage. The jinn hovered above the floor, his glowing, smoke-like eyes sweeping over the dying princess with cool detachment. "You call upon the treaties, Sultan," Deltarage murmured, his voice sounding like dry leaves skittering over stone. "She is dying, Deltarage," Ophir pleaded, his golden skin exposed in the torchlight, glinting beneath his torn clothes. "The assassin's blade was laced with dark magic. Your kind knows the ancient poisons. Save her, fix this, and name your tribute." Deltarage glided closer to the bed, hovering a clawed, smoky hand inches above Ambrain's chest. He closed his eyes, sensing the dark, oily venom coiling around her life force. "Paganite poison, meant to rot the spirit as much as the flesh," Deltarage whispered. A faint, violet mist began to bleed from the jinn's fingertips, sinking into Ambrain's skin, hunting down the venom. "It can be drawn out, but it will take time, Sultan. Her mind will wander in the gray spaces between worlds tonight." As Deltarage worked to purge the lethal toxin, outside the chamber window, towering in the courtyard beneath the moonlight, the elephant sat in patient silence. His luminous eyes were locked directly onto the window of the princess, watching her shallow breaths. Waiting for the moment her soul would be primed for the taking, Haron awoke to the smell of damp stone and iron rust. His bones ached from the cold slab floor of the palace dungeon. Panic setting in, he scrambled to his feet, closed his eyes, and tried frantically to pull himself into the spirit realm. He focused until his temples throbbed, trying to catch that icy slip, but nothing happened. He was anchored, trapped. From the dark cell directly across the corridor, a dry, rasping laugh broke the silence. "What are you doing over there, boy? Praying? Dancing?" Paganite sneered, his broken ribs heavily bandaged, sitting against the cold wall. "Or just losing your mind?" "Leave me alone," Haron snapped, his knuckles white as he gripped the rusted iron bars. "I hope they execute you for what you've done to the city. I hope they throw you off the wall." Paganite chuckled, a dark, unsettling sound. "Then I will simply be with my gods, little orphan. Death is just a doorway, but you'll rot in this hole as a traitor's accomplice." Throughout the long, agonizing day, Paganite's voice echoed off the damp stone, taunting Haron, picking at his fears, mocking his uselessness. But Haron stopped responding. He sat in the quiet corner of his cell, breathing slowly, tuning out the assassin's voice, turning his fear into laser focus. He didn't just want to escape, he needed to escape. Late into the evening, as Paganite was in the middle of another harsh insult, the cold air suddenly rushed into Haron's chest. The color drained from the cell, the world bleached into silver ash. Haron vanished from the physical cell entirely, stepping cleanly through the spirit realm. Across the hall, Paganite's eyes widened in sheer shock. He lunged to the bars of his cell, staring at the empty floor space where the boy had been sitting a split second before. Ignoring the stunned assassin, Haron sprinted out of the dungeon corridor and glided up through the stone floors into the palace above. His plan was simple: escape the city before the guards noticed he was gone. As he glided through the ghostly, quiet halls of the royal wing, he froze. A glowing, ethereal figure was wandering slowly down the hallway ahead of him, It wasn't a monster or an ancient spirit. It was Princess Ambrain, her translucent, spiritual form floating gently above the marble floor, looking at the tapestries. Haron fell back into the shadows, trailing quietly behind her, assuming she was a lost, oblivious spirit floating in the gray space. "Why are you following me, Haron?" Haron gasped, stepping back as Ambrain turned around, her glowing eyes looking directly at him with calm awareness. You can see me," Haron stammered, stepping into the dim silver light. Are you dead?" Ambrain smiled softly, a bit of sorrow in her eyes. "No, just waiting for my body to wake up and let me back in. Deltarige is holding my spirit here until the venom leaves my blood." She tilted her head at him. "Why were you at the palace last night? They say you were working with the invaders." "I wasn't," Haron said desperately, stepping closer. "I came to warn the guards. I saw them sneaking into the city. I was trying to save you." "I know," Ambrain said gently. Haron blinked, stunned. You know." "Deltarige told me everything," she said, glancing toward the high windows. "He sees what happens in the spirit realm. He knows you tried to stop them." She stepped toward him, her ethereal form radiating warmth despite the coldness of the spirit realm. "You must go, Haron. If the guards find you in the waking world, they won't listen. Hide in the city. When I wake up, I will tell my father the truth. I'll make sure he clears your name." Relief washed over Haron like a tidal wave. "Thank you, Princess." "Go," she urged softly, "before the sun rises." Nodding, Haron turned and pushed through the palace walls, descending into the winding, shadowed alleys of the lower city below. He slipped into the dark underbelly of Ophir, going into hiding, unaware that while Ambrain promised him safety, the true threat was already waiting for him in the daylight. By mid-morning, the palace dungeons were in absolute chaos. The guards sent to haul Haron out for interrogation found only an empty cell, the heavy iron door still locked tight from the outside. Paganites sat across the hall, grinning in sinister silence, refusing to explain how the boy had simply dissolved into thin air. Within the hour, the horns sounded from the palace walls. City guards poured into the streets, posting posters and searching every alley, market stall, and rooftop for the escaped outcast. High above the bustling courtyard, the colossal form of the elephant stood on the stone balcony, his massive head turned toward the commotion below. His pale, luminous eyes watched the guards interrogating the townspeople. "They move with great urgency," the elephant's deep, rumbling voice reverberated through the stone balustrade. Sultan Ophir stepped out onto the balcony, his golden skin glinting under the harsh desert sun, his face lined with anger and exhaustion. "The boy from last night, he has vanished from his cell," Ophir said. Shaking his head bitterly, "Haron, he is an outcast here, a boy with no family, always causing trouble and disturbing the peace of my city." "An outcast," the elephant mused, leaning closer, his ears fanning out slightly. "Yet he broke into your grand hall in the middle of a raid. What does he claim to be?" "Nonsense and blasphemy," Ophir spat, gripping the marble rail. "He claims he can walk through the spirit realm. He preys on the superstitions of the weak-minded, but it is clearly some dark curse or forbidden trickery he holds. I believed he was aiding Paganites' assassins." The elephant's glowing eyes narrowed slightly, a mortal boy who can step through the veil on command. The thought stirred something ancient and hungry within the beast's massive chest. A spirit walker was rare and dangerous, but in the hands of Yahweh's agent, such a boy would be the ultimate harvester. "Fascinating," the elephant whispered, a low, ominous rumble rolling from his throat. "A child who walks between worlds. I must meet this boy." Ophir looked up at the titan, surprised. "Meet him. If my guards find him, noble beast, he will be put in chains." "Leave the boy to me, Sultan," the elephant said smoothly, turning his massive gaze back out over the sprawling, sun-baked city of Ophir. "If he is cursed, perhaps he simply needs a guiding hand." The grand plaza before the palace was a sea of furious, shouting citizens. Under the blistering midday sun, thousands had gathered to witness the fate of the man who had brought blood to their gates. At the top of the marble dais stood Sultan Ophir, his golden skin reflecting the harsh sunlight, glinting beneath his royal robes. Towering directly behind him, like a colossal statue of judgment, sat the elephant. The sight of the massive, ancient beast standing side by side with their king sent ripples of awe and terror through the crowd. In the center of the plaza, bound in heavy, cold iron chains and forced to his knees, was Paganite. Despite his bruised face and broken ribs, the assassin held his head high, a bitter, mocking smile playing on his lips. Ophir raised his hand, and the roaring crowd fell into a tense, expectant silence. Paganite of the North, Ophir's voice boomed across the square, echoing off the sandstone walls. You stepped into my house under the cover of dark. You spilled the blood of my guards, laid hands upon the royal line, and sought to cast this city into ruin. How do you answer for these abominations? Paganite spat a mouthful of blood onto the hot stone. He looked past the Sultan, his dark eyes locking onto the glowing, pale eyes of the elephant. I answer to my gods, gilded fool, not to a puppet king or a tethered monster, Paganite rasped, his voice cutting through the quiet. My strike failed today, but the shadow over Ophir does not lift. Kill me, send me to the dark, my brothers will finish what I started. A wave of outraged shouts erupted from the crowd, but Ophir simply raised his hand again, his face turning to stone. Your gods cannot hear you beneath the sands, Ophir declared softly. At dawn tomorrow, you will be thrown from the highest precipice of the city walls to answer for your madness. As the crowd cheered for blood, a high-ranking palace guard hurried up the steps of the dais, bowing low to the Sultan. Speak, Ophir ordered quietly, turning away from the bound assassin. How is my daughter? Princess Ambrain rests in her chambers, Your Grace, the guard whispered. The jinn Deltarage continues his work. Her breathing is steady and the venom recedes, but he says her mind remains frail. It will take time before her spirit fully settles back into her body. Ophir let out a slow, heavy breath of relief. And the boy, Haron, has he been captured? The guard hesitated, lowering his head further. No, Sultan. Our men have searched every alley, market, and quarter in the lower city. It is as if he vanished into thin air. We are continuing the sweep, but... He is clever, Ophir muttered bitterly, frustration tightening his brow. And he knows the hidden corners of this city better than my soldiers. Behind him, the ground subtly vibrated as the elephant shifted its massive weight forward. The shadow of the giant beast fell over both Ophir and the guard. A city guard looks for a boy using boots and steel. Sultan, the elephant's deep, resonant voice rumbled from its chest, sounding like sliding tectonic plates. They look where a mortal hides, but a creature with sight looks where the spirit leaves a footprint. Ophir turned, looking up at the divine titan. You would hunt him yourself. Not to hunt, my king, the elephant murmured, bowing its head with smooth, terrifying grace. To retrieve. A lost, confused child who walks between realms requires a delicate touch. Allow me to step into your city and bring him to light. Ophir looked at the beast, a wave of profound gratitude washing over his face. You honor us beyond measure, noble guardian. Go with my full authority. Find Haron and bring him back. The elephant's luminous eyes flashed with a cold, hidden triumph. It shall be done, the beast whispered. Haron ran until his chest felt like fire. Every time he heard the metallic clatter of palace guards in the distance, panic spiked his heart rate, forcing his body to flicker unpredictably. 1 second, he was dashing past physical fruit stands. The next, he was stumbling through the ghostly, monochrome ash of the spirit world, passing through spectral jinn who ignored him entirely. The strain was exhausting. Sweating and trembling, Haron collapsed into a dark, dead-end alley beneath the shadow of a crumbling archway, dropping out of the veil and panting against the cool stone. Then the ground began to pulse. It wasn't a sharp shake, but a heavy, rhythmic vibration that made the dust dance on the cobblestones. Haron scrambled backward, his eyes widening in horror as a colossal shadow stretched down the narrow alleyway, blotting out the harsh desert sun. The massive, ancient elephant turned the corner, its towering frame filling the entire space. It trapped the boy against the back wall. Haron squeezed his eyes shut, frantically trying to force his heart to race, trying to trigger the shift back into the spirit realm, to disappear, to run. But his mind was too exhausted, his power completely locked. "No, please," Haron choked out, pulling his knees to his chest. "I didn't help the assassins, I swear." The massive beast stopped a few paces away. Slowly, heavily, it sank to its knees, lowering its colossal head until its glowing, pale eyes were level with the terrified boy. There was no rage in those eyes, only a profound, gentle warmth. "Peace, child," the elephant's deep voice rolled over Haron like a warm desert wind, vibrating softly in his ribs. "I did not come to bring you to chains. I know you are no traitor." Haron blinked, his frantic breathing slowing down. You know. "I saw you step through the veil when the blood was spilt," the elephant rumbled softly, its massive trunk swaying gently. "The mortals of this city see your gift as a curse. They fear what they cannot touch. They call you a nuisance, just as they called me a monster when I first approached their gates." Haron looked up, stunned, staring into the ancient beast's luminous eyes. "We are the same, Haron," the elephant continued, its tone dripping with hypnotic empathy. "We are both two beasts of the sands, stranded among men who do not understand our purpose. You were there to help the people last night, just as I was." Tears pricked Haron's eyes. For years, the city had thrown stones at him, calling him cursed. Now, the divine savior of Ophir, the glorious beast that had crushed Paganite's army, was looking at him not as a monster, but as an equal. I tried to warn them," Haron whispered, his voice trembling. "I saw Princess Ambrain in the spirit world while I was escaping. Her soul is wandering the halls. She told me she'd tell her father the truth when she wakes up, but I couldn't save her from the poison." The elephant's luminous eyes flickered with a dark, hidden flash of satisfaction. "Ambrain's soul is wandering exposed. The information was invaluable. And you shall not have to carry that weight alone any longer," the elephant said smoothly, leaning closer. "Your power is wild, Haron, unruly. It slips from you when you panic, leaving you exposed. Let me guide you. Let me teach you how to master the veil." Haron's breath hitched. You can teach me. I am here to protect the physical bodies of these people," the elephant declared softly, a solemn pledge in its voice. "And you are meant to guide their souls. Together, we can protect everyone." A wave of profound relief and belonging washed over Haron. He wiped his nose, nodding eagerly. Thank you. "Stay hidden here in the shadows of the lower city," the elephant instructed gently. "Rest your mind. I shall return when the sun sets, and our lessons shall begin. Tell no one." Later that evening, the heavy double doors of the palace throne room echoed as the elephant returned, its towering silhouette framing the sunset. Sultan Ophir stood near the high windows, turning eagerly as the beast approached. "Noble guardian, what news? Did you find the boy?" The elephant lowered its head in a grand, sorrowful bow. "I walked the entirety of your lower city, Sultan," the beast rumbled smoothly, its voice thick with deceptive regret. "I searched every alley and checked the spirit paths. The boy has hidden himself well, or perhaps left the city walls entirely. I found no trace of him." Ophir sighed, waving a dismissive hand, a weary smile touching his lips. "Do not burden yourself, my friend," Ophir said, looking out over his glowing golden city. "It is fine. Haron is like a rat in the grain stores. He always shows back up when he gets hungry. My guards will catch him eventually. Tomorrow, Paganite dies, and my city can finally breathe." Behind the Sultan, the elephant's glowing eyes gleamed in the twilight. Everything was proceeding precisely as planned. The eastern horizon bled deep orange and crimson as the sun rose over Ophir. High atop the city's highest parapet, a sheer cliff of stone dropping hundreds of feet into the jagged rocks below, a massive crowd had gathered in silence. Sultan Ophir stood at the edge, his polished golden skin gleaming like a beacon in the dawn light. Next to him stood the elephant, its colossal shadow stretching across the stone ramparts. Paganite was dragged to the ledge by 4 palace guards, his heavy iron chains rattling against the stone. His body was bruised and battered, but his eyes burned with fanatical heat. Ophir stepped forward, his voice echoing over the silent crowd. "Paganite of the North, for the blood of my guards, for the assault upon my blood, and for bringing war to the gates of Ophir, your time in this realm is ended." Paganite didn't flinch. He spat blood onto the Sultan's golden sandals and looked up at the sky, a chilling laugh rising from his chest. "Cast me down, gilded coward," Paganite rasped, his voice wild. "My blood waters the sand, but my gods already march. You think yourself safe behind stone and bone? The shadow over Ophir has only just begun." "Throw him," Ophir commanded flatly. The guards shoved Paganite off the precipice. The assassin didn't scream as he fell. His dark laughter echoed off the canyon walls until the sharp, brutal end, echoing from the rocks far below, silenced him forever. The crowd erupted into cheers, relieved that the shadow of the invasion was finally lifted. Ophir closed his eyes, taking a long, heavy breath of peace. Beside him, the elephant's luminous eyes remained completely cold. To an immortal entity, the death of a mortal assassin was merely a tiny piece being cleared from the board. As night fell over the celebrating city, the elephant quietly slipped away from the palace courtyards. Plunging into the dark, narrow alleys of the lower city, the Titan moved with uncanny, silent grace despite its immense size. It navigated the shadows until it reached the crumbling, abandoned archway where Haron lay huddled, wrapped in a threadbare blanket. Haron gasped, scrambling up as the low, rhythmic vibration of the earth announced the beast's arrival. "You returned," Haron whispered, his eyes wide with a mix of awe and relief. "I promised I would, young one," the elephant rumbled softly, sinking to its knees in the cramped alleyway so its massive head was level with the boy. "The city celebrates tonight. Paganite is gone, but your exile remains, unless we fix what is broken within you." Haron looked at his own hands, his chest tightening. "I don't know how to control it. Whenever I panic, I just slip." "Because you fight the shift instead of getting it," the elephant said, its deep voice hypnotic in the quiet night air. "Walking between worlds is not a curse, Haron. It is a bridge. You must learn to hold the veil open, to step through not out of fear, but out of absolute intent." The elephant leaned closer, its glowing eyes locking onto Haron's. "Tell me, Haron, when you saw Princess Ambrane's soul wandering the palace halls, where was she? How did her spirit look to you?" Haron, completely trusting his new mentor, leaned in. She was near the royal wing, near the high balconies. She looked glowing but faint, like a candle flame in a draught. "A candle flame," the elephant repeated, a low, dark hum vibrating deep within its chest. "Fascinating. Tonight, Haron, we begin your training. You will step into the spirit realm, and you will show me how you walk among the souls." Unaware that he was handing the monster the exact location and condition of the princess's vulnerable spirit, Haron nodded eagerly, ready to learn. The training began in the deep, forgotten cisterns beneath the lower city, dark, cavernous ruins where the light of the sun never reached. "Look into the gray spaces, Haron," the elephant rumbled softly, his massive body filling the shadow of the subterranean hall. "The souls trapped between worlds are lost, shivering in the cold. They cannot find the light on their own. They need a guide. They need you." Haron sat cross-legged on the damp stone, his eyes closed, his breathing measured. "I feel them," he whispered, his body shivering as the air turned to ice. "They're like embers, dying out." "Touch them," the elephant instructed, his pale eyes burning with a hidden, predatory hunger. "Pull them across the threshold. Bring them into this realm and hand them to me. I shall take them to the light. I shall carry them to heaven." At first, Haron struggled violently. Every time he reached into the veil, the spirit slipped through his fingers like smoke, or the shock of the unseen world snapped him back into his physical form, breathless and sweating. But day after day, under the beast's patient, hypnotic voice, the boy's control tightened. He learned to reach across the divide without fear. On the fourth night, Haron's body flickered with pale, silver luminescence. He reached his phantom arm into the dark, his fingers wrapping around a dim, weeping spirit, the ghost of a forgotten desert traveler lost in the gray. With a smooth, decisive pull, Haron dragged the wandering soul entirely out of the unseen realm, holding the flickering light in his cupped hands. "I did it," Haron gasped, his eyes wide with awe. "Bring it to me, child," the elephant whispered smoothly. Haron stepped forward and handed the small, glowing spark of life to the beast. The elephant opened his massive jaw, inhaling the spirit deep into his ancient form. A surge of dark, divine power rippled through the titan's hide, his tusks momentarily glowing with harsh, white light as he funneled the stolen soul straight up to the celestial darkness, offering it up to wicked Yahweh to fulfill his long-overdue debt. Haron smiled, a deep sense of purpose washing over his lonely heart. He believed with every fiber of his being that he was saving them. As the days turned into weeks, Haron's mastery grew exponentially. He became a master harvester, pulling lost souls out of the spirit paths night after night, handing them over to his trusted mentor to be sent to paradise. High above, in the quiet, gilded halls of the royal palace, Princess Ambrain remained unconscious. Her spirit floated gently near the high ceiling of her chamber, a radiant, unblemished soul of pure gold, lingering in the gray spaces while Deltarid's violet magic slowly purged the remaining assassin's venom from her blood. She was the grandest prize in Arabia, a soul so pure, so bright, that presenting her to Yahweh would buy the elephant centuries of divine favor. And the beast was growing impatient. From the high cornices and shadowed archways of the palace, unseen eyes were watching it all. The jinn, hovering as dark, smoky shapes in the rafters, watched the elephant lead the young boy into the dark cisterns every night. They watched Haron pluck spirits from the veil. They felt the cold, unnatural siphon of power dragging human souls out of the realm and devouring them into the heavens. Deltarid glided through the shadow of the princess's curtained bed, his smoke-like eyes narrowing as he looked out the high balcony window toward the city. The jinn knew the truth. They knew the beast was not a shepherd of light, but a thief of spirits, and they watched silently as the innocent phantom boy unwittingly prepared the net that would catch the princess herself. The atmosphere in the palace's high towers grew cold and still as midnight settled over the city of peace. Floating just beneath the arching marble ceiling of her private bedchamber, Princess Ambrain's soul shimmered, a soft, golden spirit tethered to her physical body resting below, though her physical eyes were closed. Her spiritual sight was wide open. She glided silently out onto the high balcony, looking down at the quiet palace gardens. That was when the shadows began to coil around the marble pillars. From the darkness emerged three towering jinn, their smoky, ethereal bodies shifting like black velvet and embers. At their center was Deltarid, his form towering and majestic, his glowing eyes fixed upon the young princess. "Princess," Deltarid's voice reverberated, soundless yet echoing in her mind like distant thunder. "Your spirit wanders far tonight." Ambrain hovered back slightly, her golden light flickering with caution. "Deltarid, my father speaks of your wisdom, but why do you come to me in the realm of spirits?" "To warn you of the predator standing in your father's court," Deltarid replied coldly. "The colossal beast your kingdom worships as a savior, the elephant, is not a protector. He is a shepherd of the damned." Ambrain's spirit construct blinked in disbelief. "The elephant, he crushed the army at our gates. He saved my father." "He saved this city only to claim a greater prize," another jinni hissed from the shadows. "He is an ancient entity bound to the wicked throne, tasked with gathering souls for his god, the idiot Yahweh. For centuries, he brought back only worthless souls, but now he has found the ultimate instrument." Deltarid stepped forward, his smoky arm gesturing toward the lower city. "He has found the boy Haron, the child who walks between realms. The beast has lied to him, convincing the boy that lost spirits need to be led into the light. Night after night, the child plucks souls from the unseen and hands them to the beast, who devours them and sends them to the dark places of the heavens to pay his divine debt." Ambrain gasped, her golden glow shuddering in horror. "Haron, he thinks he's helping, he's being used." She turned urgently toward Deltarid. "We must tell my father. Sultan Ophir will cast the beast out. he will rally the guards, he will. Your father cannot stop a creature of the heavens, princess, Deltarige interrupted softly, a somber weight in his voice. And we cannot tell him. Why? Ambrain pleaded, floating closer to the ancient spirit. You built this city with him, you bound your people to his kingdom. Why do you stand by and watch this monster manipulate an innocent boy and steal the souls of our people? Deltarige raised his hand, the smoke around him thinning as he looked down at the mortal realm with ancient, detached sorrow. Our pact with Sultan Ophir was forged of earth and spirit, Deltarige declared quietly. We swore to protect your people from mortal threats, and in return, your people protect us from those who seek to command us. That pact is within our rights, and we fulfill it faithfully. He looked into Ambrain's glowing eyes, his gaze unyielding. But we are creatures of smokeless fire, princess. We cannot interfere in the matters of the heavens, nor cross the mandates of that dark god Yahweh. The wars of gods and their emissaries are not ours to fight. We are bound by the laws of the primordial balance, to listen and to observe. We can do no more. Ambrain stared at the jinn, her heart sinking into absolute dread. The jinn would not step in. Her father was blind to the danger. Haron was trapped in the monster's web, and floating here, a radiant, helpless spirit above the palace, she realized with sickening clarity who the elephant's true target really was. The poison was gone. Deltarige's violet magic had completely purged the last traces of Paganite's venom days ago. Her heart beat strong and steady, her skin had returned to its warm, radiant hue, and her lungs drew deep, effortless breaths. By every physical measure, Princess Ambrain was cured. Yet her eyes remained closed. Deep in the stillness of the night, while the palace slept, a massive shadow would silently blot out the moonlight in her high bedchamber. The elephant's long trunk would slide through the arched balcony doors like a silent serpent, hovering over the sleeping girl. From the tip of its trunk, a fine, shimmering dust, a celestial sedative crafted to numb the spiritual tether, would drift down over her nose and mouth. It was a quiet, invisible chain. Every night, the elephant reinforced the spell, ensuring her spirit remained detached, floating hopelessly in the gray spaces above her body, just out of reach. She was a fruit fully ripe, waiting for the right moment to be plucked. By the seventh day, despair had overtaken the royal court. The medicine men are baffled, the healers are weeping, Sultan Ophir cried, his voice breaking as he stood at the high balcony overlooking the grand plaza of the city. Her body lives, but her soul will not return. Driven to his knees by grief, the Sultan called for a day of universal devotion. The entire metropolis gathered in the massive central courtyard below the palace. Thousands upon thousands of citizens, merchants, guards, servants, and monks knelt together upon the cool stone. The air thundered with the unified, soaring chant of a city in prayer, thousands of voices lifting up supplications to Allah for the recovery of their beloved princess. Sultan Ophir, his golden skin glinting in the midday sun, bowed his head to the earth alongside his people, weeping openly. High on the royal dais, standing directly behind the Sultan, towered the elephant. While thousands pressed their foreheads to the dust in deep humility, the colossal beast stood completely erect. It did not bow its head, it did not close its eyes, it lowered neither its trunk nor its towering ears. Instead, the elephant stood in rigid, arrogant silence, its luminous, pale eyes staring straight ahead into the heavens. To bow to the god of this city would be total treason to Yahweh, the master who held its ancient leash. The beast cared nothing for the tears of the Sultan or the prayers of the mortals. High above the praying crowd, floating near the grand dome of the palace, Ambrain's spirit watched the scene in utter horror. She saw her father weeping on the ground. She saw the city pouring its heart out in prayer. And standing right over her father's defenseless back was the silent titan, arrogant, unyielding, and holding the key to her prison. The elephant descended into the shadow of the forgotten cisterns, his heavy footfalls hollow against the damp stone. Haron looked up from his cross-legged seat, wiping sweat from his brow. He had just finished another successful harvest, his control over the veil refining with every passing hour. "Is the city still praying?" Haron asked, his voice echoing in the gloom. "I heard the bells all the way down here." "They pray to Air Child," the elephant rumbled, a strange, harsh edge sharpening his deep voice. "The princess." She sinks deeper into the dark, her breath fades, her body weakens. Haron's eyes widened, horror striking his chest. "No, the jinn. I saw them floating around the palace walls when I was in the grey spaces. Are they not helping her?" The Sultan said they were wise. The elephant let out a low, guttural snort, the sound vibrating the stone beneath Haron's feet. "The jinn," the beast sneered, its pale eyes flashing with cold contempt. "Pathetic, eavesdropping creatures of smoke. They sit in the rafters, whispering among themselves, offering nothing. They watch mortals suffer and call it balance. They are cowards, Haron, useless." The Titan leaned down, its massive, intimidating head looming over the boy until Haron could smell the ancient, dry dust of its skin. "It cannot be the jinn. It must be you, Haron." "Me," Haron stammered, stepping back slightly. "You are the bridge between worlds," the elephant said, its tone shifting back into a smooth, hypnotic velvet. "Tonight, you must step into the spirit realm and climb to the royal wing. You must find Princess Ambrain's soul and bring her to me." Haron paused, a flicker of confusion crossing his brow. He looked up into the Titan's glowing, unblinking eyes. "Bring her to you?" Haron asked slowly, his heart thumping. "If I find her soul in the grey spaces, shouldn't I try to guide her back to her body? Shouldn't I help her wake up?" The elephant's ears twitched, a sudden, violent flicker of impatience breaking through its gentle facade. "No," the beast snapped, the sharpness of its command ringing loudly in the dark cistern. Catching itself, the elephant smoothed its voice, though a cold, sharp chill remained in the air. "Her body is ruined, boy, a broken vase. If you force her spirit back into that shell, she will suffer. Bring her soul here to me. I will guide her home, to the true light." Haron stared at the elephant. For weeks, the beast had been a soft, guiding light, a wise father figure who spoke of mercy and saving lost sheep. But looking at it now, beneath the harsh shadow of the ruins, the boy felt a sudden, icy knot twist in his stomach. The beast's voice sounded hungry, demanding. Why wouldn't he let her wake up? Why insulting the jinn so bitterly? I understand," Haron whispered softly, swallowing his rising panic. "Go then," the elephant ordered, stepping back into the darkness. "Do not fail her." Haron closed his eyes and took a deep, shivering breath. The air around him turned to frost, the world losing its vibrant hue as he slipped beneath the veil. His physical body slumped against the cold stone of the cistern, but his phantom form burst out into the unseen world, sprinting toward the palace. He was going for Ambrain, but for the very first time since meeting the Titan, Haron was full of doubt. Haron glided through the phantom halls of the palace, his silver, ethereal feet making no sound against the spirit realm's grey floor. "If I'm doing the right thing, why does it feel like I'm dragging a blade across my own heart?" The doubt gnawed at him. He passed silent human guards standing watch in the waking world, their physical forms blurred and unaware. He passed the towering, smoky shapes of the jinn perched in the high arches, their cold eyes following him, watching his frantic search with ancient, heavy silence. He searched room after room, the throne room, the high balconies, the gardens, until finally, floating near the grand vaulted ceiling of the royal wing, he saw her. Princess Ambrain's soul hovered like a radiant, golden star, weeping silently in the dark. "Princess," Haron called out, rising through the air to meet her. Ambrain turned, her golden light flaring with defensive fear as she looked at the young outcast. "Have you come to steal my soul, Haron?" Haron recoiled, his hands flying up. No, I'm saving you, the elephant. He sent me to pull you out of the grey spaces before you fade away. He's going to carry you to the light." "Haron, listen to me," Ambrain pleaded, floating closer, her voice ringing with desperate clarity. "The elephant is not who he says he is. He isn't a holy savior, he is a monster. He's using you to feed Yahweh, taking souls that don't belong to him." "That's not true," Haron snapped, defensive, grasping desperately onto the only friend he thought he had. He crushed Paganite, he saved your father, he helped me when everyone else treated me like a monster. He's the savior this city needed." Ambrain looked at him with profound pity. She looked up through the high window, catching the warm, orange glint of the setting sun. "The sun is going down," she whispered gently. "Come with me, see for yourself." She drifted down toward her private bedchamber below, and Haron, his heart pounding against his ribs, followed her down through the floorboards. Inside the quiet room, Princess Ambrain's physical body lay still upon the silk sheets, but standing over her bed was the colossal, hulking shape of the elephant. Haron froze in the spirit realm. The beast's long trunk hovered inches from the sleeping girl's face. Haron watched in sheer, horrifying silence as the elephant exhaled a fine, shimmering cloud of celestial dust down into her nose and mouth, re-administering the silent, magical sedative that kept her spirit severed from her body. Haron's breath caught in his throat, his blood ran cold. He's keeping her trapped. He's the reason she can't wake up. Suddenly, the elephant's massive head snapped in their direction. His pale, luminous eyes stared straight toward the spot where their phantom forms hovered. He could not see them in the veil, but the ancient titan felt the sudden, frantic shift in the spiritual energy of the room. A cruel, hungry smile curled behind the titan's giant tusks. Yes, the elephant's deep rumble vibrated through the room, echoing ominously into the spirit realm. "Yes, Haron, I feel you. Bring her soul to me." The illusion shattered. Every lesson, every saved soul, every gentle word, it was all a grotesque lie. He hadn't been a hero. He had been a thief hand-delivering innocent lives to a cosmic predator. A guttural, heartbroken roar erupted from Haron's chest. Driven by pure, blinding fury, Haron snapped out of the spirit realm, his physical body violently rematerializing right inside the bedchamber. "No," Haron screamed, hurling himself furiously at the colossal beast, his hands glowing with chaotic, unleashed spirit energy. He struck out, but the elephant barely flinched. With a casual, ruthless sweep of its massive trunk, the beast slammed Haron across the room. The boy crashed violently into the marble wall, breaking a pillar and slumping to the floor, gasping for air as blood spat from his lips. The doors to the chamber burst open. Sultan Ophir and a dozen heavily armed guards stormed into the room, swords drawn, expecting an attack. The elephant immediately stepped back, bowing its giant head and placing its massive body between the guards and the princess, putting on a show of desperate protection. "The Sultan was right," the elephant boomed, his voice full of righteous disgust as he pointed a giant tusk at the bleeding boy on the floor. The rat finally showed its face. Haron struggled to push himself up, his head spinning. "No, Sultan, listen to me, he's—" "Silence," Sultan Ophir shouted, his eyes blazing with absolute fury as he looked at the outcast boy sitting beside his daughter's bed. "He sneaked into the princess's quarters," the elephant declared smoothly to the panicked king. "I caught him attempting to finish the kill on Princess Ambrain. If I had not been standing guard, her life would have been snuffed out tonight." "Thank Allah you were here to stop it," Ophir gasped, his voice trembling with terrifying rage. He rounded on his guards, his golden skin flaring in the torchlight. "Seize him, throw him into the deepest cell in the dungeons, and do not take your eyes off him this time." The guards piled onto the bruised, broken boy, pinning his arms behind his back and dragging him out of the room. Haron thrashing desperately, screaming the truth, but his cries were swallowed by the cold stone hallways. And as he was dragged down into the darkness, Haron caught one last glance back into the chamber, where the elephant stood victorious, looming over the silent princess, praised as a hero by the very king he was destroying. The cold, iron door slammed shut with a heavy, final thud. Haron sat on the damp stone floor of the deepest dungeon cell, his hands resting on his knees. But Haron wasn't afraid of the chains, nor the iron bars. He knew the truth now, they could never truly hold him. The veil was always open to him. "I need to speak to Sultan Ophir," Haron called out to the guards packing the torchlit corridor. "You don't understand. The elephant is the enemy. called the Sultan down here." The guard on duty sneered through the iron grate, resting his hand on his scimitar. "Silence, rat. You'll get your audience with the Sultan tomorrow at sunrise on the executioner's block. You'll stand the exact same judgment as your infidel friend Paganite." Haron slumped back against the stone wall, a hollow feeling settling in his chest. Hopelessness weighed heavier on him than any iron chain. Nobody would listen to a boy the city already hated. Heavy, rhythmic thuds echoed down the stone corridor. The guard immediately snapped to attention, bowing low as a massive, dark silhouette blotted out the torchlight. "Leave," the elephant's deep voice reverberated off the damp walls. "I will watch over the prisoner tonight." "Of course, noble savior," the guard said hastily, bowing repeatedly as he unlocked the outer gate and hurried up the stairs, leaving the subterranean level in total darkness save for the pale glow of the Titan's eyes. The massive beast stepped up to the bars of Haron's cell. The gentle, reverent facade was entirely gone, replaced by a cold, murderous fury. "How dare you?" the elephant hissed softly, the sound like grinding stone. "How dare you defy me, boy?" Haron looked up at the Titan, tears of confusion and betrayal stinging his eyes. "Why are you doing this? I thought we were friends. You said we were the same, two beasts of the sands." The elephant threw back its massive head and let out a dry, chilling laugh that vibrated the dust from the ceiling. "Friends," the Titan sneered, leaning its giant face right up against the iron bars. "The last time I called a mortal friend, he was a stupid Christian king named Abraha, a blind fool who led us straight to our humiliating defeat at the gates of the Kabba, destroyed by a sky full of damned birds. The Almighty stripped my form and turned me into this, an eternal servant tasked with harvesting souls to pay off a debt I never owed." The beast's pale eyes burned with centuries of unholy malice. "So no, boy, we were never friends. You were a tool, a sharp, useful little key to bypass the jinn's wards, and now you are broken." Haron shuddered, pressing his back against the cold stone. "You're going to kill Princess Ambrain." "I will have that whore's soul," the elephant declared, its trunk twitching with cruel anticipation. "And I want you to watch every second of it. That is the only reason your heart is still beating." A wave of pure instinct took over. Haron closed his eyes, took a sharp breath, and vanished into thin air, slipping seamlessly into the spirit realm. The elephant stared at the empty cell, letting out another low, dark rumble of laughter. "Yes, flee, little rat. Run anywhere you like in your grey world. It changes nothing." Haron didn't run away. He ran straight for the palace high tower. Crossing into the unseen, he burst through the marble floor of Princess Ambrain's bedchamber. There, floating near the grand vaulted ceiling, was her golden spirit. Down on the floor, Sultan Ophir was on his knees, weeping and praying over his daughter's motionless physical body. Haron drifted up beside her, gently placing an ethereal hand on her shimmering shoulder. "I'm sorry," Haron choked out, his spirit form shuddering with remorse. "I'm so sorry for what I've done. I brought those lost souls to him. I almost brought you to him, but I promise you I will not let him have you." Ambrain turned to him. Her golden light softened, and a warm, forgiving smile touched her spirit's face. "You are kind, Haron," she whispered gently, her ethereal fingers lightly brushing his hand. "And it isn't your fault. He tricked all of us. My father, the guards, the whole city. We all thought he was our savior." "Not anymore," Haron said, his eyes hardening with a fierce, desperate resolve as he looked down at her sleeping body on the bed. "I need to get you back into your physical form, getting you awake. That's the only chance we have to stop him." In the shadowy corridors of the spirit realm above the palace, the elephant's anger festered. Haron had slipped his grip. Ambrain was still beyond his reach. He needed more power, and he needed it now. His pale, luminous eyes locked onto the tall, smoky figure hovering near the high arches. Deltarage. Before the jinn could react, the elephant moved with terrifying, supernatural speed. Dropping into the unseen realm, the colossal beast slammed a massive, shadow-draped tusk through Deltarage's ethereal chest. Deltarage let out a silent, agonizing shriek that vibrated the very foundations of the unseen. The elephant opened its maw, violently draining the jinn's radiant, smokeless fire, tearing away pieces of his essence to feed his unholy hunger. Deltarige collapsed to the spirit floor, his form flickering like a dying candle, horribly wounded and bleeding violet mist. The assault did not go unnoticed. Across the desert sands, the spiritual sky cracked open. A wave of suffocating heat swept over Ophir as Muluk, the grand king of the local jinn, perceived the desecration of his kind. "The truce is broken." Muluk's voice boomed like thunder across both realms. From the sky, dozens of towering jinn manifested, beasts of swirling dust, jagged flame, and obsidian shadow, storming the physical gates and high towers of Ophir in a blind, furious rage. Sultan Ophir had sworn to protect the balance, and now a jinn's spirit blood had been spilled within his walls. Below, the palace erupted into sheer panic. Bells rang, horns blared, and the sky turned a bruised, fiery orange as jinn forces clashed with human archers on the battlements. In the royal courtyard, Sultan Ophir charged out onto the marble steps, his golden skin flashing in the unnatural heat. He looked up at the elephant, who stood towering over the courtyard as guards screamed and fought around them. "What is the meaning of this?" Ophir roared, drawing his gilded sword. "Why are the jinn attacking my city?" The elephant lowered its massive head, its voice booming with deceptive, tragic outrage over the sounds of war. "The truth reveals itself at last, Sultan," the elephant cried, pointing a giant tusk toward the sky. "It was not mortal assassins who breached your walls. It was the jinn. They broke the sacred truce. They brought Paganite's shadow into your house, and now they burn your city to cover their treason." Ophir's eyes flared with absolute betrayal-fueled fury. Believing every word, he raised his blade to the sky. "To arms, drive the spirits back into the sand." Within seconds, total chaos gripped the city. Mortals fought spirits, arrows passed through shadows, and fire rained on the lower quarters. Meanwhile, slipping through the silver haze of the spirit realm away from the main battle, Haron found the broken, flickering form of Deltarige slumped in the high tower's alcove. "Deltarige," Haron gasped, dropping to his knees side by side with the dying jinn. The spirit lifted a clawed hand, his violet light dim and fading. "The Titan," Deltarige rasped, his voice sounding like crumbling ash. "He feeds on us. He framed my people. Muluk will tear this city to dust." "We can stop the war," Haron said desperately, helping the jinn steady his flickering form. "Ambrane's soul is here, but she's trapped out of her body. I need to break the elephant's spell and put her back in. You know the spirit medicine, help me." Deltarige looked at the boy, seeing the fierce, unyielding truth in his eyes. He knew that if Ophir and Muluk destroyed each other, the elephant would feast on the ruins. "He used celestial dust to sever her tie," Deltarige whispered, raising his wounded hand to hover over Princess Ambrane's floating, golden spirit. "We must forge a bridge of smokeless fire to burn away the sedative. But it will take both of our powers, boy. You must hold her soul steady." "I'm ready," Haron declared, his hands bursting with raw, untamed spirit energy. As the war raged outside the palace windows, spears clashing against living flame and Sultan Ophir leading his army into a disastrous lie, Haron and Deltarige began the desperate ritual to wake the princess. In the high tower chamber, the air hummed with violent spirit energy. Deltarige channeled his remaining smokeless fire into Haron's hands, forming a searing, brilliant conduit of violet light. Haron gritted his teeth, thrusting his glowing hands into the chest of Princess Ambrane's ethereal form. The grey celestial dust that had bound her soul flared, hissed like water on burning coals, and dissolved into nothingness. Instantly, the golden tether snapped taut. Ambrane's spirit was violently yanked backward into her physical body. On the velvet bed, her eyes flew open. She sat upright with a harsh, violent gasp, lunging forward as if breaking through the surface of water. Her heart hammered against her ribs, her lungs burning with real air for the first time in days. Beside her bed, unseen in the silver haze of the spirit realm, Haron and Deltarige watched her catch her breath. "Go," Deltarige rasped, his flickering form leaning heavily against a marble column before the city burns to ash. Ambrain scrambled off the bed on trembling legs. Ignoring her weakness, she burst through the double doors of her bedchamber and sprinted down the grand staircases toward the roaring chaos outside. In the royal plaza, the battle had reached a bloody fever pitch. Sultan Ophir's heavy archers and golden guards had pushed the jinn forces back toward the city gates, but only because the elephant fought at the front lines. The Titan moved like an unstoppable mountain, its massive tusks shattering living stone spirits, its divine light blinding the fiery warriors of Muluk. Muluk himself, a towering phantom of black smoke and crowned with obsidian flame, hovered above the gates, his eyes burning with absolute wrath as his brethren fell. Practicing deceit, Sultan, Muluk's voice shook the sandstone walls. Your tethered beast bleeds my people. You broke the sanctuary, Ophir roared back, his golden skin glinting under the blood-orange sky as he raised his blade to strike down another spirit. You brought assassins into my house. Stop! The scream cut through the clash of steel and the roar of supernatural fire. At the top of the plaza steps stood Princess Ambrain. Her hair was tangled, her robes loose, but her eyes burned with absolute authority. Cease this madness, all of you, she cried, her voice echoing off the canyon walls. Ophir's blade froze midair, his breath caught in his throat. Ambrain. He dropped his weapon, abandoning the battle line and sprinting up the steps toward her. My daughter, you live. Step back, child, the jinn have betrayed us. Ambrain completely ignored her father. She pushed past him, marching straight down the marble steps into the neutral ground between the two armies. Her eyes locked onto the towering, shadowy form of Muluk. King Muluk, Ambrain called out, her voice clear and unyielding. Our ancient pact was not broken by the House of Ophir. We swore to protect your kind from mortal threats, and my father held to that oath with his life. Muluk lowered himself slightly, his fiery crown flickering with suspicion. Yet one of my realm lies mutilated within your walls, princess. Because this Titan is no mortal, Ambrain declared, pointing a shaking finger directly at the colossal beast. The elephant's ears fanned out slowly. Its glowing, pale eyes narrowed into two deadly slits, fixing her with a gaze that could wither iron. Beside Ambrain, the air shimmered and tore open. Deltarige stepped through the veil into the physical world, dragging his wounded form into the daylight. He clutched his chest, violet spirit mist bleeding onto the marble. She speaks the truth, my king, Deltarige choked out, bowing his head to Muluk before glaring at the Titan. It was the elephant. He ambushed me in the unseen. He fed upon my smokeless fire to fuel his divine magic, and he framed our people for the assassin's raid. A collective gasp rippled through the ranks of the Golden Guards. Sultan Ophir felt the world tilt beneath his feet. He turned slowly, looking up at the massive Titan he had welcomed as a divine holy savior. Is this true? Ophir whispered, his voice trembling with a mixture of horror and profound humiliation. The elephant didn't answer. It slowly lifted its massive head, letting out a low, terrifying sound, a dark, grinding rumble that shook the dust from the surrounding buildings. The warm, benevolent aura surrounding the beast dissolved, replaced by an suffocating, ancient malice that made the horses scream in panic. Ophir's face turned to stone. The humiliation evaporated, replaced by the cold rage of a king. Guards, Ophir roared, pointing his gilded sword at the monster. Seize him. The Titan threw back its massive head and unleashed a deafening, sky-shattering trumpet of war. It was no longer pretending. With a single, catastrophic sweep of its massive trunk, the elephant struck the front line of Golden Guards. The force of the impact launched 30 armored men into the air, throwing them like ragdolls against the palace walls. The beast rampaged forward. Stone columns shattered like glass beneath its crushing weight. Spears bounced harmlessly off its divine hide. Jinn fire dissolved against its aura before touching flesh. It smashed through man and spirit alike, utterly unstoppable, tearing the Grand Plaza apart in a blind, murderous fury. The holy savior of Ophir had dropped its mask, and now it was going to tear the city to the ground. The climax hit with the force of a collapsing mountain. When the elephant truly unleashed his divine, ancient wrath, neither the blades of mortals nor the flames of spirits could stand against him. Muluk roared, swirling into a massive cyclone of obsidian fire and jagged stone, descending upon the titan with the full majesty of the jinn. But the elephant simply swept his massive tusk upward through the storm. The impact cracked the air like thunder. Muluk's fiery crown shattered, his spectral body torn asunder as he was slammed violently into the sandstone battlements, leaving the mighty jinn king broken and flickering helplessly in the rubble. Sultan Ophir charged forward, his gilded sword blazing as he struck at the beast's flank. "Fools," the elephant roared, his voice no longer smooth, but a terrifying metallic bellow that shook the teeth in Ophir's jaw. With a brutal, sweeping kick of his massive foreleg, the elephant caught the sultan mid-strike. Ophir was launched across the plaza, smashing through a marble pillar and crashing into the center of the dais. Ambrain screamed, rushing to her father's side. The damage was horrifying. The royal robes were shredded, and the strike had shattered the sultan's skin, revealing that beneath his mortal flesh, Ophir was made of solid, polished gold. But that shimmering gold was now spiderwebbed with jagged, glowing cracks, leaking a divine, molten light as the sultan gasped for breath, entirely paralyzed and bleeding golden radiance onto the dust. The elephant loomed over them, his massive shadow blotting out the sky. He placed one heavy, crushing foot directly onto Ophir's chest, making the cracked gold groan under the pressure. "Your father's core is fracturing, princess," the elephant rumbled, his pale eyes burning with cold, absolute dominance. "A single step more, and the Golden King becomes nothing but dust on my shoe." "Stop, please," Ambrain begged, tears streaming down her soot-stained face, shielding her father with her body. "You have a choice, Ambrain," the elephant declared, his voice echoing over the ruined, silent plaza. "Step out of your mortal husk. Hand your radiant soul over to me willingly, so I may pay my debt to Yahweh, or watch me crush your father's chest and lay waste to every living, breathing soul in this pathetic city." Ophir coughed, molten light spurting from his lips. "No, Ambrain, don't." Ambrain looked at her father's agonizing frame, then at the bloodied guards and broken jinn littered across the stone. There was no hope left. The jinn king was down, her father was dying, the city was defenseless. Trembling, she slowly stood up, raising her hands. I yield, take me, just spare him." The elephant smirked, his massive maw opening, ready to siphon her divine light. "A wise choice, little light. Leave her alone." The roar didn't come from the sky, nor did it come from the earth. It echoed from the very space between reality. The air in the center of the plaza tore open with a blinding flash of silver light and violet smokeless fire. Haron stepped out of the rift. He was no longer the frightened, shivering outcast in threadbare rags. He stood radiant, suspended perfectly between two realms. Silver spirit veil draped over his shoulders like an ethereal cloak, while raw, violet jinn energy crackled around his fists and coursed through his veins. He had become the bridge, the master of the seen and unseen, a true jinnman. The elephant blinked, his glowing eyes widening in genuine shock. "Haron." "You used me," Haron said, his voice echoing with a dual resonance, part mortal boy, part ancient spirit power. "You made me steal souls for your dark lord, but today the harvest ends." With a flick of his wrist, Haron shifted into the unseen. He vanished from sight, leaving only a sonic boom in the air. Before the elephant could react, Haron rematerialized directly above the Titan's head in the physical realm. Channeling the entirety of his newly mastered jinn fire, Haron slammed a concentrated blast of violet energy directly into the elephant's forehead. The blast exploded with catastrophic force. The colossal beast let out an agonizing trumpet of pain, his massive head thrown back as he was violently forced off of Sultan Ophir. "Insolent rat," the elephant bellowed, whipping his massive trunk to crush the boy. Haron didn't run. He phased his body into the spirit realm mid-strike, allowing the massive trunk to pass harmlessly through his phantom form as if he were made of smoke. The second the trunk passed, Haron instantly solidified back into the physical realm, grabbing the beast's tusk with hands burning with jinn strength and driving a spike of pure, concentrated Veil energy into the root. The tusk shattered with a deafening crack. The elephant shrieked, staggering backward on uneven legs, black spirit blood pouring from the stump of his tusk. Haron hovered in the air before the monster, his eyes burning with pure, unyielding silver-violet light. He raised both hands, drawing upon the spirit paths of the entire city. Hundreds of glowing, ethereal tethers burst from the ground, wrapping around the giant titan's legs, binding his divine weight and dragging him down to his knees. For the first time in centuries, the great elephant felt true, suffocating terror. He was outmatched. This boy was not just a spirit walker anymore. He was a master of both worlds, possessing power that broke the rules of celestial and mortal magic alike. Realizing his plot was utterly destroyed and his life was on the line, the elephant let out a furious, bitter roar. Gathering the last of his divine reserves, the beast flared his aura in a blinding flash of white light, shattering Haron's spectral chains. Without looking back, the wounded titan turned and surged through the physical city gates, fleeing into the deep, scorching expanse of the desert, his terrified trumpet echoes fading into the sands. Silence fell over the ruined plaza. The smoke began to clear, revealing the shattered stone and the awestruck faces of the surviving guards, the recovering jinn, and Princess Ambrain. Haron slowly descended, his glowing aura fading back into his skin, his feet settling gently onto the hot dust of the city that had once thrown stones at him. He had saved Ophir. The adrenaline of battle dissipated, leaving behind a heavy, echoing silence over the ruined courtyard. Ash floated down like grey snow, dusting the shattered marble and the groaning bodies of men and jinn alike. Ambrain scrambled through the rubble, dropping to her knees beside her father. The Sultan's golden form was fractured, brilliant amber light bleeding from the deep cracks in his chest. Gently, she cupped his face. "Father, stay still," she wept softly, her voice trembling. "It was Haron. He walked into the dark between worlds and pulled my soul back to the light. He saved me. He saved all of us." Sultan Ophir gritted his teeth, forcing his body to obey. With an agonizing, metallic groan, the Golden King pushed himself up, resting a heavy, cracked hand on his daughter's shoulder. He looked at the outcast boy standing in the middle of the plaza, the child his guards had hunted through the gutters. Ophir bowed his head, lower than he ever had to any mortal or king. "Forgive me, Haron," Ophir said, his voice thick with profound shame and gratitude. "I was blind. I judged you by the fear of my people rather than the truth of your spirit. You have saved my blood, my throne, and my soul. The doors of this palace and my house will forever be open to you as a prince of Ophir." Haron stood quiet for a long moment, the wind playing with his threadbare clothes. He felt the weight of the offer, the warmth, the home, the acceptance he had starved for his entire life. But his eyes slowly shifted past the Sultan, toward the shattered gates pointing out into the vast, unforgiving desert. Before answering, Haron walked toward the slumped, flickering form of Deltarage. The jinn was fading, his violet smokeless fire bleeding into the stone. Haron knelt and laid his glowing hands upon Deltarage's chest. A soothing, silver-violet wave swept from Haron into the spirit, weaving the jinn's torn essence back together until Deltarage drew a sharp, revitalized breath. Haron stood up and looked back at Ophir, his young face hardened with a solemn, ancient purpose. "I am honored beyond words, Sultan," Haron said quietly, his voice echoing with the quiet power of the veil. "But I cannot stay. That beast lives. He knows the paths of the unseen now, and as long as he's drawing breath, no soul in the sands is safe. I must follow his tracks." Ophir looked into the boy's eyes and saw a warrior birthed by destiny. He nodded slowly, respect gleaming through the cracks of his golden face. "Go with the grace of the heavens, young brave." Beside them, King Muluk lowered his towering frame, his crown of black fire burning steadily once more. "The pact endures," the Jinn King declared, his voice rolling over the courtyard like deep thunder. The House of Ophir stood for spirit-kind today. My people will remain to rebuild these walls. We are bound in blood and stone. Before the relief of peace could settle over the plaza, the sky above the palace caught violently tore open. A pillar of pure, white-hot fire erupted from the clouds, spiraling downward like a striking serpent. The heat was blinding, searing the air and forcing the guards to shield their eyes. When the blaze collapsed in on itself, a magnificent figure stood in the center of the courtyard. Wings woven of shifting flame folded behind his back. His skin hummed with celestial light, and his gaze carried the terrible, majestic weight of ages. It was Firewhirl, the Watcher Angel. A breathless awe gripped the courtyard. Even Muluk shifted back, recognizing the terrifying aura of a true celestial entity. "Greetings, fine kings," Firewhirl spoke, his voice sounding like roaring brushfire and ringing brass. "I congratulate you on surviving the storm today." Firewhirl's blazing eyes slowly turned, completely ignoring the Sultan and the Jinn King, locking directly onto Princess Ambrain. "Your brief time wandering near Sheol alerted me to your awakening, Princess," Firewhirl said, stepping forward. His voice carried a sudden, intense gravity that made the air grow thick. "You carry a secret beneath your mortal skin. The blood of Lilith, the primordial mother of shadow, runs potent and pure through your veins." Ambrain gasped, stepping back into her father's shadow. Ophir's eyes widened in shock. "The tyrant who sent that titan to devour your people, the false Lord Yahweh, is the very entity I am bound to tear down," Firewhirl continued, extending a glowing hand toward her. "Your lineage holds a dark, powerful magic hidden deep within your soul, a weapon forged to break celestial thrones, but unrefined, it will consume you. With proper training, you can become the key to ending his reign forever. I ask that you come with me." Before Ambrain could process the shock, Haron stepped directly between the Watcher Angel and the princess, his fists igniting with violet jinn fire, his eyes flashing silver. "She's not going anywhere," Haron growled fearlessly, ready to fight an angel for her safety. A soft, mournful sigh touched the air. Ambrain gently reached out, placing her hand on Haron's shoulder. The heat of his defensive magic cooled beneath her touch. "Brave Haron," Ambrain whispered softly, tears brimming in her eyes as she looked at the young boy who had crossed realms for her. "That is not your choice to make." Sultan Ophir stepped forward, his heart pounding against his cracked golden ribs. "Where are you taking my daughter, Angel? Speak plain." Firewhirl looked at the Golden King with solemn respect. "Deep within the hollow earth lies a sacred, hidden domain, Agartha, shielded from the eyes and reach of Yahweh by ancient wards. It is where the rebellion gathers its strength. It is the only place she will be safe, and the only place she can unlock what she truly is." Ambrain looked at the ruined city, at her broken father, who had almost died to protect her, and then at the sky. She knew the truth in her bones. As long as she stayed, the divine tyrants of the heavens would keep tearing Ophir apart to claim her soul. "Leaving is the only way to keep our people safe, Father," Ambrain said, her voice trembling with heartbreak, yet steady with resolved purpose. She hugged Ophir tight, pressing her cheek against his warm, golden skin. "Goodbye, Father, I must go." Ophir held his daughter close, shutting his eyes tightly as molten golden tears slipped down his face. He knew she was right. "Go, my precious light, survive." Ambrain stepped away and turned to Haron. The boy looked lost, the fiery confidence of battle melting back into the raw emotion of a child who had finally found someone to care for. "I hope we meet again someday, Haron," Ambrain murmured, offering him a sad, beautiful smile. "Until then, hunt your beast." Firewhirl extended his hand. Ambrain took a deep breath, reaching out and wrapping her fingers around the angel's light. With a deafening crack of thunder, the pillar of fire engulfed them once more, spiraling upward into the heavens before vanishing completely into the blue, leaving only ash, destiny, and an open desert behind. The desert wind howled across the endless dunes, whipping stinging red sand against the elephant's massive, battered hide. The titan staggered, his heavy, rhythmic footsteps uneven in the deep drifts. Black spirit blood bled continuously from the jagged stump of his shattered tusk, staining the pristine white sands behind him. His breath came in ragged, wheezing gasps. For the first time in millennia, the divine beast knew the agonizing, humiliating weight of defeat. Suddenly, the desert went dead silent. The howling wind stopped instantly. The heat vanished, replaced by an unnerving, suffocating cold that turned the air to ice. High above the dunes, the clear blue sky tore open like a wound, revealing a blinding, oppressive, colorless light that burned the eyes to look upon. A voice descended from the tier, not loud, but possessing a weight that crushed the sand dunes flat, vibrating deep within the earth itself. "You were given my mark, you were given my might." The elephant gasped, his massive knees instantly buckling as the sheer, absolute gravity of the presence pressed down on him. The titan dropped his colossal head into the burning sand, trembling violently. "My lord, Yahweh," the elephant whimpered, his voice stripped of all arrogance. The child, he was an anomaly, a creature of both veil and flesh. "Excuses are the language of these pathetic mortals, beast," the divine voice thundered coldly, utterly unbothered by the titan's bleeding injuries. "You were sent to harvest a city and claim the princess of shadow. Instead, you crumbled before a child and a handful of smoke spirits. You have broken my reckoning. You have embarrassed my name." "Grant me another chance," the elephant pleaded, digging his remaining tusk into the earth. "I shall return to the gates. I shall crush the Golden King." "Silence!" An invisible force slammed down onto the elephant's back, cracking the earth beneath his massive frame. "You are no longer my champion. You are a broken tool. If you were one of my chosen people, I would have already made you eat your own genitals. Begone into hiding like the coward you are, deep beneath the wastes, where the sun cannot shine upon your shame." The tear in the sky began to close, the blinding light dimming, but the voice delivered one final, chilling promise that froze the titan's heart. "But know this, when the time is here, I shall return for you, and you better not fail me again." The sky snapped shut. The desert wind roared back to life with a violent gust, swirling sand over the dunes. The elephant lay alone in the freezing sand, wounded, abandoned by his god, and stripped of his holy purpose. With a low, mournful groan, the colossal shadow dragged itself forward, vanishing into the dark, uncharted caves beneath the deep desert, waiting for the day his master would call him back to war. For 3 days, the city of Ophir hummed with the sound of hammer and chisel. Human laborers and towering jinn worked side by side in the desert heat, heaving sandstone blocks, repairing the palace battlements, and raising the fallen pillars. The pact between the House of Ophir and King Muluk was stronger than it had ever been, forged anew in the fire of shared survival. Haron stayed through it all. He walked the Grand Plaza, using his silver-violet magic to mend the spiritual tethers of the city and heal the guards wounded in the battle. The people who had once spat at his feet now bowed their heads in deep reverence as he passed. He was no longer the rat of the gutters, he was the savior of Ophir. On the morning of the 4th day, Haron stood at the grand gates of the city. Beside him stood Sultan Ophir, his golden skin largely restored, though fine, shimmering silver lines still traced where his cracks had been mended, a permanent reminder of the day the truth was laid bare. Beside the Sultan lay a splendid, well-built camel laden with saddlebags filled with pure water, dried fruits, fresh linen robes, and a blade forged of steel and cold iron. "You could stay, Haron," Ophir said softly, resting a warm, heavy hand on the boy's shoulder. "A palace, a title, wealth beyond your dreams, you have earned a life of peace." Haron looked back at the grand city, its gilded domes gleaming in the morning sun. He felt the genuine warmth of the offer, a dream he had held for so many lonely years. But he felt the tug of the desert horizon even more, and the dark, lingering shadow of the wounded titan still out there in the wastes. Haron offered the Sultan a small, peaceful smile. "You gave me something far better than a palace, Sultan. You gave me my name back, but my path lies out there." Ophir looked into the boy's eyes, seeing the quiet, unyielding strength of a true guardian, and slowly nodded. "Then take my gratitude, young brave. Wherever you ride, the wind of Ophir rides with you." Haron climbed onto the camel, gathering the leather reins in his hands. He took one long, final look at the majestic city of peace, at the palace where Princess Ambrain had once looked out over the sands, and at the high arches where Deltarige silently raised a smokeless hand in farewell. Turning his mount away from the gates, Haron kicked gently, heading out into the vast, open expanse of the desert. The sun was just beginning its slow descent over the red dunes, painting the sky in deep hues of violet, orange, and gold. As the warm desert breeze swept past him, Haron's eyes flickered with a faint silver-violet light. He was an outcast, no more. He was a master of two worlds, riding out into the sunset to hunt the darkness and protect the unseen.